Okay, can you hear me out in Zoom land? All right.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, welcome to the December meeting. This is a little bit unlike other meetings, and I think we have 8 speakers, but anyway, a lot. And Carol's in New Zealand. So does anybody have any things to share, like plants they've seen recently, or did you like the weather? Yes, and it was, yeah, so things are coming back with the rain, things are growing, and then we're going to have some more rain, and then things will grow some more too, I think. Yeah, Gilly is showing up. Yeah, I'm just repeating it for them. Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Next month is January 2025, and one of our grant recipients, a student from Cal Poly, is going to be speaking, Sebastian. Anyway, you can read about that on the webpage tomorrow after I update it. So I think we'll just get started since we have so many speakers. So Claudia, you'll go first, and then please, speakers, use the microphone, and then in between I'll try to do technical stuff. Yeah. And then I'm sending this thing around. We need worker bees. You are the worker bees, and I'm worked out, so I'm not going to sign it.
Worker bees are all females, so the guys are all right. We don't have to do that.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, and we can shut the lights down too.
And you said. Hi, I'm Claudia Voigt, and Carol had already asked me louder, you said, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
the microphone doesn't do anything for us. It's
Oh,
only
yeah. Closer as in louder, you said. Yeah. Yeah, I'm Claudia Voigt, and Carol Ralph had already asked me last year to show some pictures of the nodding beggar ticks. And finally, here they are. And they're not just, I'm not just showing them for their beauty, but also as an example for the still under-described distribution and traits of some of the plants here on the North Coast. And you may wonder why such beautiful sunflowers have such a weird name as nodding beggar ticks or burr marigold. And it's because, now it doesn't want to advance. It did before, I swear.
Yeah, usually the first one is a problem.
There it did. It did. Go for it.
All I
Yeah.
have to do is nothing.
Okay. It's because their seeds stick so well to any fabric. That's why they're called beggar ticks. I met this plant on my first CNPS North Coast chapter field trip to Dead Lake in Talwa Dunes State Parks in 2018. And there, the flowers were smaller and better fitting with the species description. And even though they're golden yellow, as you can see there on the right, the single plant blends in pretty well with its wet surroundings there. And Carol told us all their name, but she did not mention that according to the Jepson eFlora, this species does not even occur here on the North Coast. And many of the Humboldt specimen don't fit the characteristics of the species as it's described here, but that's a topic for another talk. And I just want to show that, and Peter and I just talked about it, how weird that is. On CalFlora, you can see that the species is mainly distributed in the Sierra Nevada, and that the only observation in Downard County is that one that I made on our CNPS North Coast chapter field trip to that lake, and that the only CalFlora observation in Humboldt County is from Mary Ann, who will speak later tonight. But if you look on iNaturalist, you will see that the two of us are not the only ones who have noticed these showy sunflowers in recent years. And as Mary Ann's observations, most are located in and around Humboldt Bay National Wildlife Refuge, Hookton Slough area, like this showy display from 2020. So in those disturbed wet areas, you can often find like bigger occurrences of them. And a curious exception to them being around the Hookton Slough area is this occurrence in the Bayshore Mall, Palco Marsh area. And it's not often that you have to say that an awesome wildflower is best accessed from the Walmart parking lot, like this one. And on the picture on the left, I'm standing where the little red X is on the map on the right. And this parcel is owned by the Bayshore Mall LLC. And you can see that they put this levee in on the south. And so it might be used now for stormwater drainage. And this whole area that is filled with water on this picture, which is from the wintertime, is filled with bidens in September. So it's fresh. Like I bet there's a little bit of salt in there because the other plant that's in there is the Bulboschiornis maritimus, but I bet that most of it is the groundwater, the fresh water. Have any of you seen the bidens in recent years, the nodding beggar ticks? I know that there was a field trip this year in September. I don't know if anyone got to see them flowering. Nope. I think it's definitely a worthwhile spot to check out. Now it would be too late. It's underwater, but September is a good time to check them out. And come September, I always long for some fall colors and textures. And so I brought some other pictures as well from our October field trip to the South Fork Trail and House of Acre this year. By the way, like maybe 10 people. And Carol also reported about this field trip in the latest Darlingtonian newsletter. And for me, it's one of my favorite early spring places. And so this was a quote to get to see it in the fall time. And we were much rewarded. And here, here with the red buds. And then does anyone have a guess what this golden yellow tree far down the steep slopes close to the river might be? Any guesses? Dogwood, I heard here. That's a good guess. But that's not it. Any other? Ash, yeah, Oregon ash, Fraxinus latifolius. That's it. There's quite a few of them closer down to the river. And I just thought it was funny that it was just like flaming up there for us like that. And along the trail, as I said, like I'm the textures and colors person, the buckwheat was showing off its naked stems in many colors for us. And the pipe stem clematis was showing its fluffy fruit. And we were wandering through many wonderful habitats and microsites where mossy dripping oak branches met golden red bud leaves, but also big leaf maple grows close by to holly leaf redberry, which is one of the chaparral and montane shrubs along the trail that barely make it into far eastern Humboldt County and make this trail also so interesting. And I loved also the fuzzy wild grapes there. And yes, we did, as my last slide, see some fall wildflower beauties. It's redwood camellia and California fuchsia that were just growing together on the rocks along the South Fork Trinity River. Thank you. That was it.
Thank you, Claudia. Donna's next, and I'll try to find her slides.
Okay, so while Paul's getting this set up, I'll just say, the slides I took are from last year, 2023, when I was fortunate enough to spend a week in Juneau, Alaska, I was visiting Kathy Dilly, a good friend of mine, and some of you probably know her. She used to live here in Humboldt County, and she was very active with CNPS. She worked at our nursery, and she coordinated our native plant consultation service. So she's now living and working in Juneau, and that was my motivation to get up there. I'd never been to Alaska before.
Is to remove this window away from the shared application. I have no idea. It's okay, just ignore it. Here's your thing.
Okay.
Yep.
And so let's see if we can get over the first slide problem.
Yeah, not that.
This one here.
Yeah, no, did something. Amazing. Okay, well, you're there.
Okay, there we are. So this is in the northern part of Juneau, and it's a little community called Auk Bay, where, and this is where Cassie lives. And this is a little community park there. And this white line here is the Mendenhall Glacier. So we walk into this park, oops, and it's filled with these wonderful flowers. This is a native iris, Iris setosa. This is their native fritillaria, which is common name chocolate lily. Quite spectacular plant. We saw quite a lot of those. Moving into the forest, this is one of the major understory shrubs there, Devil's Club, which is sort of a gnarly, thorny plant. And I guess that's why they call it Devil's Club. We also saw several beautiful patches of this dwarf dogwood or bunchberry. And that's some false azalea, which we also have growing here. We saw quite a lot of it on our hikes around Juneau. And it was always, as you see it here in the picture, with this very distinctive grayish green foliage. So it really stood out from the other plants in the forest. Now, we did see a lot of other plants that I'm not going to show you pictures of because they're ones that are common to our area here. The plant that we saw the most of, I think, is goat's beard. It was all over and was in flower. Wonderful plant, but don't have any pictures of it. So one of the days we went for a hike in the northern area, north of the city proper, to a sphagnum bog along a place called Coe Creek. And so here's the bog, and you can see the skunk cabbage growing up around the edge of the bog there. Here's another view of the bog. This is one of the plants that was growing in the bog. It's called deer cabbage. Oops. And then we went out of the bog area into this very large meadow that was just covered with flowers, including this native geranium, berry called Nagoon berry. And Kathy says these are particularly delicious berries. This is sweet gale, which is a relative of our Pacific wax myrtle. It was listed in the book as in the genus Myrica, but I don't know if it's been moved into Morella as our wax myrtle has. Really nice white bog orchid. Pretty little beach pea or vetchling. And here's Kathy. And you can see we're just surrounded by these amazing flowers. And you'll also notice, what do you think that is? bear spray, which Kathy was very good about wearing whenever we went out. Fortunately, we didn't ever have to use it. So getting nearer to the ocean at this point, here is a plant called beach greens. Another beach plant called sea milkwort. Another day we took a hike up into a higher elevation area, which is a ski area in winter. And you can see here in the middle of June, the snow is just melted. And so you've got these rivulets and these skunk cabbages emerging along the rivulets. It's a fairly high, I don't know what the elevation is, but fairly high elevation meadow where we saw some bog rosemary, alpine white marsh marigolds. And there were two different species of twisted stalk that we encountered there. Twisted stalk also grows around here. How many of you ever have seen twisted stalk here? Okay, good. They have two different species there. And this one is clasping twisted stalk. So what you want to notice is the white flowers and that very strong 90-degree twist above the flowers there. The other species is rosy twisted stalk. And so it's got these beautiful purpley rosy color flowers. And instead of a 90-degree angle, it just has a very nice even curve going down to the flower. So the last day there, we hiked up a little closer to the Mendenhall Glacier. You can see it there. And on the trail around that area, we saw two different species of wintergreen. This one here is one-sided wintergreen. And this one here is bog wintergreen, excuse me, also known as heart-leaved wintergreen. And this one is a lousewort, pedicularis. It's the alpine lousewort. And so that was fun to see, interesting pinky rose color. And there's the last picture. Looking out, when you look out west from Juneau, you're not looking at the Pacific Ocean. You are seeing a large channel of water. And what is in the background here are the islands of the Alexander Archipelago. And so, but it's a beautiful view and it was a wonderful trip. Great to see Kathy. And we just saw so many beautiful different environments and wonderful flowers.
Donna. That's very beautiful. So Fletcher, you'll next. Am I doing something? I think I'm doing something.
You're doing something. As long as it did something. There we go. Hi, my name's Fletcher, and I worked most of my career in Southern California in Tulare County. And I had the pleasure of getting out to Anza Borrego after a couple really big winters in the spring or the late winter, actually, of 2004, usually February into April, February into May, February into March, and in 2004 and 2017 to see the super bloom. Anza-Borrego Desert State Park is along Highway 78 in between the Salton Sea and San Diego, about 50 miles from Mexico, and has great elevation changes from almost 9,000 feet down to sea level. This is the one of the three California deserts, the Sonoran Desert. It's found near sea level. I'm just going to hit the high points for the potluck talk. The first workhorse of annual and short-lived perennials is the Abronia villosa, the desert sand verbena, which occurs in the desert of California, which is a lot like our yellow sand verbena and our pink sand verbena here in Humboldt County. It's looks a lot like the same thing, and the Abronias are found throughout the West. I like them because they have a fidelity for a parent material. They almost always grow in sand, all the different species, including one in the Sierra Nevada mountains in Ramshot Meadows Abronia, and one at Yellowstone at West Thumb on the sand growing on the beach. So the Abronias are lovely, but they make great displays across the desert floor. Another one of the high points is the Dune Evening Primrose, which has a big flower, 3 or 4 inches across, and a lovely evening primrose with lots of stigmas and stamens and stuff going on. Is a perennial. This one's interesting because even though it's an annual, it creates a woody structure at the end of its life called, some people call it the devil's lantern or lion in a cage. It may be to break off and roll like a tumbleweed. Is the most simple explanation, but I don't know what the explanation is, why it wouldn't just fall to pieces instead of turning into an actual structure like that at the end of its life cycle. This one is another one that occurs upon acres and acres and acres and acres, both in Death Valley in the Sonoran Desert and in Anza-Borrego, is the desert sunflower. It's a beautiful smelling stands. Whenever you get out of the car or go for a walk in this, you can really smell this flower. It's the one that had the most lovely smell. Just a regular with your disc flowers and your ray flowers, but just occurs across acres and acres and acres of in Anza-Borrego in the right year. We have another one that occurs all over the place down there during good wet years, which is the brown-eyed evening primroses, which has smaller flowers and is a little bit smaller stature and has this big thick stem with the black stripes on it like this. Oh wait, that's not the stem. Both years when we were there, we discovered that with these, this species specifically, the brown-eyed evening primrose, had attracted lots of white-lined sphinx moss, so nothing is wasted in nature. And there were lots of these guys, sometimes 10 or 20 or 30 within a square foot out on the desert floor. And when they are able to go to maturity, they turn into these white-lined sphinx moss with the white lines on the wings. But frequently, in both years I was there, we observed these giant flocks of Swainson hawks that are returning from South America in the early spring or the late winter. And they stop here at the convenience store and they gorge themselves on the white-lined sphinx moss larva. It was a wonderful National Geographic story that we were able to see there. It was neat to see. Another one of the notables is the desert lily, which is actually in the asparagus family, and is what they're calling it now. And it occurs in sand and also occurs in clay and is a little bit more rare in the Anza-Borrego deserts. Gets to be about 3-4 feet tall, and the flower is about as big as your hand. And the Hesperocallis undulata comes from the leaf margins, which I was pleased to learn that leaf margins get wavy because the leaf margins grow faster than the center of the leaf, so they need to spread out. So that's why it's undulating. I don't know why it would adapt to that, but that's why. The flowers are beautiful with these big pendulant filaments and stamens on the stalk. So those are most of your annuals and short-lived perennials and bulbs, but some of the more perennial species that we have there, the most showy being the Ocotillo. Fukiaria splendens in the Fukiaceae, my favorite genus to pronounce. I'm so proud of myself. It actually is has wooden stems, and then they're perennial. And then when it rains, it'll get leaves for a couple of weeks, and then they'll fall off. So it's actually deciduous across weeks rather than deciduous across years, like most deciduous plants. And it has these spines to keep people from eating it. And it has these lovely tubular red flowers, which the hummingbirds come and thing. And they also come out after a good hard rain, more in the spring, but if you could get a good hard rain in the summer or even in the fall, it'll actually flower as well. And they get to be 20 or 30 feet high. Not the flowers, but the plant itself. Another one which lights up the slopes and some of the alluvial fans is bittlebrush, which is a lovely little perennial shrub. This is what botanists call the flowers exceeding the leaves. Our local buckwheat does that. The flowers are a lot taller than the leaves. It has the beautiful composite flower composed of just flowers in the center and the ray flowers around the thing. And now I'll move on just to a few cacti to finish up the talk in the desert. These are your barrel cacti, which can get 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 feet tall. And they have ridges and they expand like an accordion as they take in water. And because they're full of water, they like to arm themselves so nobody gets in there, because you have 5 or 6 gallons of water just sitting there in the desert, and people, the animals like to take advantage of that. So you got to have some defenses. This was flowering both times we were there, and it gets this beautiful ring of flowers. And for having the flesh being so unavailable, it's rather amazing that they can get their flowers up in an area where actually the pollinators can actually access them and get through those defenses, because you don't want to keep the pollinators away, but you want to keep the people who are going to eat the flesh and the water out of your plant out of there. Another cool little cacti is the hedgehog cactus, which is a little bit closer to the organ pipe cactus and the saguaros. You can see it has these longer pedicels like those cacti have. And they're also, the pedicel is actually armored as well. So you're protecting this part, the flesh of the flower, so it can go to fruit, but you want to make your stamens and your pistils available for pollination. And both this is also called a claret cup cactus, and both the claret cup and the barrel cactus, the stamens are thignotropic. So if you get down there and put your finger in there like this, the stamens will close up and try and trap the pollinator in there, so it gets really covered in pollen, and it'll change over the course of 10 or 15 seconds. The stamens will constrict towards the stigma and the style. And finally, this is a cute little fish hook cactus. And instead of having ridges for expanding and shrinking with water supply, it actually has a little exactly. Hence the name Mammillaria diosa. And it has beautiful little, what I call the stabbers, and these are the grabbers. So trying to avoid. And this one I like also has a common name called the birthday cake, because it looks like a little birthday cake with all the flowers. And again, it's amazing how available it makes its flowers, considering how it's trying so hard to make every other part of the plant very unavailable. And if you ever get a chance, it's a great trip. And that's the end. I'll hold that till the next speaker, so you can.
Good evening. All these trips here, I'm going to stay home like I usually do in Fieldbrook, and I'll show you some of the plants from there.
it's you, Pete Taggart. And I think the first time you just press that, and then after that, you just press the arrows.
All right, thank you. And this is my garden. And most of you know that I'm also interested in insects. So a lot of the plants I plant are for those. And this is what it looks like in late spring. And you can imagine a pollinator coming by my garden and seeing all that. It would be pretty darn happy. And these aren't really clear for some reason, but this is one of my gardens in Arcata. This is a native plant wildlife garden. And I just wanted to show you what it looked like in late spring, all the different colors I hear. And everything in there is a different native plant from Humboldt County. Maybe the one you haven't seen a whole lot, this is Sedelcia malacroides, maple leaf Sedelcia. Different from the one that they commonly sell at the wildflower show. But there's a lot of different plants in there, and really makes the pollinators happy this time of the year. And I also torture plants. Don't turn me in, but this is a series of 3 manzanita that I slowly twisted together over a period of about 30 years. And this is after a rain, and I just love these because they are so beautiful, particularly in the winter when other things are brown. These are a beautiful copper color. Oops, can I go back? Okay, this is a spot that over years of planting seeds, this columbine, I collected seeds in the wild and planted it all over my garden. And it decided it liked this particular area the best. And it's been coming up and reseeding there for the last probably 40 years. But you can see there's some white rhodea. There's lily, hasn't started blooming yet. There's lots of big leaf lupin there. And this is kind of a neat place because every year it looks like this. And I don't have to do anything. The weeds don't really penetrate this well, and I think it's because the native plants there take it up so well. Anybody know that plant? Kellogg lily. And this is from this year. It was very, very beautiful. It's a hard one to grow. Once you got it, it's easy, but it's not like the pardalinum where you can dig them up, separate them. This one almost never does that. And so it's hard to get it growing in different spots. But where it is now, it's very happy. I haven't had any seedlings from it, but it's a beautiful, different lily that grows well here. This is my, making a silk purse out of a sow's ear, if you've ever heard of that. This is a Wisconsin mound or a septic area. And there's rules on these mounds that you can't put perennial plants there, woody plants. And what I've tried to do, and I'm still working on it, but to get it all native plants. And you can see that the Clarkia and the sticky monkey flower, and I forget the name of these, but everything you see there is native. And every year it gets a little bit better and a little bit better. So we're turning that septic area into a rose garden. And this is up at the Native Plant and Wildlife Garden in Arcata. And again, I love manzanita and I love to torture it. And this almost looks like what something you'd see in the mountains where it's coming out of the side of a boulder and it's twisted and has a great shape to it. And I like manzanita because they start blooming now in my garden. And that means that bumblebees and also native bees and hummingbirds depend on this because I don't use pink Kool-Aid to feed the hummingbirds. I plant plants like this, and it really pulls pollinators in over a long period of time when there's really nothing much producing nectar because it's too cold yet. The spring isn't there. So I use manzanitas in all of my gardens. And this is a wet area, and these are two common plants. This is aster, and I'm going to forget that one. That's a native grass that grows close to the coast, like, I'm sorry? Is it Calamagrostis? Oh, it is. Yeah, that's it. I'm sorry. I have both of those grasses in here, but this is Dysphampsia. And you can see how happy both of them are. And they work together because if you just plant aster, particularly if you take care of it, it will get large and flop over and take over and not look so good. But when it has competition from other plants like this or against a fence, you go down the Arcata Bottoms and you see this along a fence where the cows have kept the other plants at bay, it grows right up the fence. And of course, asters bloom really late in the year, and that means it's one of the few flowers that are still producing for pollinators. That might be the end of it. No. Okay, this is this time of the year. I took this about a month ago, and I wanted you to show that this is a beautiful color area, even though everything is done blooming here. I just love to go in an area like this, and it's in our garden, and this has been taken over by aster, fireweed, and ferns, and there's no grasses. There's no grasses that could compete with that. This whole area is simply native plants. Not all of them that I planted, but it is to me a perfect area. And you can see where the lupin seeds are done, large leaf lupin. So it is possible to outcompete not native grasses if you do it right. Oh, this must be the last one. And this is one of the pretty ones, and I've grown this for years. Stream orchid, I believe it's called. And it's one of those orchids that are really easy to grow. I've seen it along the Mad River at Blue Lake and places like this, but it really does really well in a garden if you take care of it. I think that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Pete. So the next one is Peter.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Peter Warner. This is my first meeting with North Coast Chapter. I've been here for 3 years, so I've been delinquent. Yeah, I get out a lot. I've been doing a lot of exploring. And I have lots of slides. It's probably going to run over time a little bit, but I'm going to really move along. I'm not going to probably say a lot about most of the slides. So I did use both Latin names and common names. And can you all hear me, first of all? And have you been able to read the slides okay from wherever you are? Okay. So I might even keep the naming short. Maybe. Oh, there it is. Okay. And
I'm going to keep on doing stuff. But, okay. Talk.
okay. So I did a lot of work in Sonoma County when I was still living down there through 2021. I moved here in about this time 3 years ago. And this is kind of just a partial summary of the diverse number of post-fire plants that I found in Sonoma. And some of these you'll recognize, they're not all that uncommon, but some of the displays, even of the common species, were truly spectacular. Which one do I hit now, Paul, for the?
Yeah, try that. But it turns out for some strange reason, the first slide, you often have to go like that.
Double click it. Okay, there it is.
And then after that, you should
Just with the down.
hit yeah, I don't know. Just press
I'll
right
try it.
there or something.
Okay, I'll try it. So this is one of the properties I worked on. I was mostly working for nonprofit land managers, Sonoma Land Trust and Open Space District in Sonoma County. And this is one of the places that burned in 2021. And this is one of the common, if I go back here, if you look closely in the foreground there, this is on serpentinite, ultramafic substrate. There's a whole bunch of sickle-leaved onion. Divericate aliphyllum. At that time, I think this was the first time I'd ever seen this plant. This was in 2018, right near the Sonoma Napa County boundary. Napa false indigo. It's a deciduous, kind of a foul-smelling plant. It's got a very strongly chemical odor. These beautiful, very deep indigo blue flowers in a dense raceme. One snapdragon, one of the 3 snapdragons I have here, 2 of which I had never seen before, the fires. A lot of these plants are either rank 4 or rank 1B in the California rare plant ranking system. Wiry snapdragon, this one is relatively common, but I believe it has the longest trinomial probably of any plant that grows in California. And the V period is a repeat of the specific epithet. So I think I counted, I think it's 48 letters. This was one of the plants that really enchanted me when I first saw this. It's if you've ever been, some of you have been obviously, but in some of the desert regions, there is a plant called twining snapdragon. I would call this northern twining snapdragon, and it's just got this really beautiful, graceful flowering stem form. Kellogg snapdragon. More of the flowers there. Cloud Hunt milkvetch. This is a 1B.1, which means it's very rare. In fact, the year I was out there, I think I saw 2 flowers, and this is one of them taken from different perspectives. And the total area of the population of this plant is restricted to a couple of acres in just outside Santa Rosa. One of several brodias that were flowering that year, along with one of my favorite non-native composites. We have Harvest Brodia and European Umbrella Millport. And this is also a rare plant, a narrow-flowered California Brodia. Recently separated out from Brodia californica. It was a subspecies of Brodia californica, but now it's its own species. Similar to the common red nades, this is Brewer red nades. It's a rank 4 rare plant. Essentially, a pretty good example of a fire follower. You pretty much only see it within a year or 2 following a fire. The hills, in some places, the first 2 years after the fires, in many areas of chaparral and knobcone pine woodlands, were just literally millions and millions of California morning glory. This is a Chamisoniopsis, or sun cup, that I had never seen before the fires. Of particular interest, in fact, the first time I found it, it had already passed flowering, but these are really unusual kind of pachyderm trunk-like fruits on the right there. I included this just because I thought aesthetically it was a very pleasing scene that I found. Woolly paintbrush and long tube iris. I found this was an inland population. I believe their brownie thistle grows in some coastal areas in Humboldt. I think it's more common in coastal prairie, which is more in Mendocino and Sonoma County and Point South. And I had never, in fact, at first I wasn't even sure it was brownie thistle. And while I was photographing these flowers, I noticed a bumblebee. And while I was photographing it, it took off. And I said, I'm going to follow that bumblebee. And I did. And I actually found 4 additional subpopulations of the brownie thistle thanks to that bumblebee. And on iNaturalist, I called it a bombus. I can't remember the species now, but I've had 3 other identifications that just place it in the subgenus Pyrobombus. Peak rush rose in the Cistaceae, so related to some of the ornamental cistus that are common in the horticultural trade. Quite beautiful flowers. Remind me a lot of Hypericum, but totally different family. This one was totally the rage in 2018, Sonoma County. I mean, literally full color photographs on the front page of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat of hillsides covered with whispering bells, like in the upper left-hand corner. Serpentine daisy, very rare original from the Cedars area. How many of you been to Sonoma County and ever gone to the Cedars area? If you haven't gone, maybe you'll have to find a way to get down there. Typically, the field trips out there are in May and June, but it's an incredible. When I first got to the Cedars, I was up on top of a ridge. I looked down, and I felt like I must have been in Utah somewhere. I go, how did I get here? It's totally unlike anything I'd seen really to this day in California. The landscape and the red soils and so forth, and a whole bunch of rare plants growing in that particular area. This is actually a pretty nasty invasive plant, Euphorbia oblongata, oblong spurge, which nonetheless, I think the flowers are quite ornate and really quite beautiful. And the coloration is certainly bright and cheerful, but it's actually quite a nasty plant, not necessarily a fire follower, although I did see quite a population explosion after the fires. One of my favorite fritillarias, and I know a lot of you have seen this, it's hard to miss, on serpentine or not. Another kind of cheery picture, a lot of scenes like this. The little California sunflower seems to be most prolific after fires and then kind of fades into the background. And one thing I noted in working these fires was a lot of these plants probably are not readily visible, not just because of fire, but because the habitats they grow in are pretty difficult to get into once the shrubs have grown back. So those are all mostly woodland manzanita in that particular photo that were burned. Chaparral lily, the first time I saw these in flower in a burned area, there were thousands of these coming up through mostly wavy leaf ceanothus. Another rank 4 coyote mint in this case with another pollinator, European honeybee. And I'm not going to name this one by common name because it has a lot of names, some of which are, I guess, have fallen into disfavor. And if you want to know the story behind why I call it that in this slide, I just decided I'd call it that for the sake of showing it, but I can tell you the story behind that later. This beautiful sweet-scented Phacelia, which I had never seen before 2018 and 2018-19. It was prolific and then it just disappeared. This is from vernal pools in an upland area in Sonoma County, Douglas Beard style in the mint family. Ground rose, again, another plant that rarely flowers other than immediately following fires. Couple of skullcaps. California skullcap on the left, I think tuberous skullcap on the right. This is a rare plant that had been only documented from one other location in nearby Napa County. And I didn't include the photograph, but when I first found it, there were literally hundreds of acres of this. And I was stunned to find out that it had never been documented in Sonoma County. And I still don't really know why. And by the way, in the upper right-hand corner, a very characteristic post-fire moss, Funaria hygrometrica, which is probably the only moss I know by its Latin name, but just covered the ground in chaparral the first couple of years after fire. Dark North Tridlea, and for those of you who are familiar with the Sierra flora, very similar to Tridlea ixioides in the Sierra. Another rank 4 plant. And beargrass, just stunning displays of this, like this. Hillsides covered with it. And that's all.
All right, Peter, thanks. Beautiful. Ivy guy, what's Carl?
A lot of people do call me the Ivy guy.
Yeah, sorry.
So I'm used to it.
That's the first thing. If anything comes to mind, it's more.
It's a victory.
Okay, so then I have to. Where's my thing? Wants to take care of me, then you go up here. Yeah. I need to control. Figure it out. All right. Go.
Okay, thank you. I'm Carl Klarner. I'm with RIPE, Redwood Invasive Plant Eradicators. Going to talk about invasive ivy today. So I guess page down. Oh, just like that.
Let me do the first one. And then after that, you can take up the easier. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe just this arrow. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, so you saw a bunch of beautiful pictures. I'm going to show you a bunch of ugly pictures. First, a little bit about RIPE. In the last 2 years, we've done about 1,600 hours of invasive plant removal. That doesn't include all the organizational work we do, you know, getting permissions, getting people ready, getting our tools ready, all that stuff. This is just a thumbnail sketch of where we've been, what kind of places we go to. One thing that sets us apart from other groups is that we go to private residences because that's where the worst infestations are. That's where the fruiting ivy is, just giant fruiting ivy infestations. We've been to about 70 residences. So these are examples of ivy deserts. So the ivy just chokes out all the native plants, shuts down the whole ecosystem, shuts down the food web. And so the native animals have nothing to eat. The insects have nothing to eat. So yeah, ivy desert. These are ivy berries. This is the main way that ivy propagates. So a lot of people, they'll see a monoculture of ivy and they'll think that this is just the result of one or a few plants that have just grown out of control. But actually, it's the result of a bunch of berries that have been deposited there. So so there's genetic testing of the, they'll take samples from all the plants there, and it turns out that there's hundreds of different individual plants in these monocultures of ivy. So it's not because it's growing all over the ground. I mean, it does grow all over the ground, but it's mainly the seed dispersal that's driving this problem. Okay, so here's an example of fruiting ivy in a tree. This is a giant tree with ivy all over it. Jeff in the back actually took this one out. So ivy doesn't fruit unless it gets up somewhere high. It takes 7 to 10 years to fruit once it's up high. So the vast majority of ivy is not fruiting. And so if we can just take out the fruiting ivy, we can really markedly stop its expansion. So yeah, it takes 7 to 10 years once it's up high. So even once it's up high, it takes quite a while. So the other thing is it goes into turbo drive once it starts producing those berries. It's producing tens of thousands of berries. But the thing is, it's also its Achilles heel, because all you got to do is girdle the ivy around the base of the tree. Everything above it dies. And so, maybe that's 2,000 pounds of ivy there. In like 20 minutes, you can kill literally a ton of ivy, and you can stop it from propagating. That last picture was from McKinleyville. That was on a private residence that we went to. These are other examples of trees that have just been inundated with ivy. On the right there, you'll see a deciduous tree that's been inundated with ivy. The thing about deciduous trees is they can't compete with the ivy, because ivy is evergreen. The deciduous tree loses its leaves. Then the ivy is getting all the more light because it's not, its leaves are not, the sun isn't being blocked from its leaves. And so a lot of times we find dead deciduous trees laying all over the place. Once the ivy kills a tree, the tree falls over. That's not the end of the ivy's life. Now, sometimes it is if it gets broken off or something when it falls, but it generally sends out roots like octopus arms, and then it starts getting nutrients from the ground. And it's also created a light gap because it just killed that tree. And so as a result, it's thriving even after it kills the tree, and then it's just producing more and more berries. And it creates like this dense thicket of fruiting ivy on the ground that's like sometimes 8 feet tall or so. Okay, so on the left there is a redwood tree. The ivy is going up about 100 feet. There's studies where they meticulously take all the ivy out of a tree and they weigh it, and it's like, again, 2,000 pounds of ivy easily in a tree like that. Actually, a lot of times I take videos of stuff. So when they asked me to do this, I couldn't use most of my material because the videos show you way more three-dimensionality and the actual size of stuff. So these aren't actually the worst infestations that I've got footage of. It also really helps to put people in the pictures because then it gives you more of a sense of scale. Okay, so ivy really loves being next to creeks because it's wet. Ivy is a water hog. It's very thirsty, and that's another reason that it kills trees, because it's stealing their water. So next to Ryan Creek, there were at least 20 mega infestations of fruiting ivy in like a very small, maybe 2-mile stretch. They're all dead now, of course. But the problem with ivy next to creeks is it kills the trees, they fall over, and then the creek is no longer shaded. And the water gets hotter, it's bad for the fish. Ivy was also often planted as erosion control, but it's actually really bad at erosion control because all the roots don't go that deep and they're all interlocked. And when it fails catastrophically, and it just dumps a whole bunch of grit and dirt into creeks. And so again, that's really bad for the fish. Okay, so these are some big ivy lianas. When a vine turns woody, you call it a liana. So the ones I'm holding, that's like, they're 50 years old. That's probably a 50-year-old ivy plant. There's your friend, Mark Maurer. So he's next to this big liana that was south of Redwood Acres that we took out. Yeah, I have a whole trophy hall next to my house of giant lianas like that. A lot of times the ivy lianas will fuse with each other and they'll make these lattices. And so these look particularly obscene to me. The top two, the greenery has been taken off, you know, all the ivy leaves and all the ivy stems. And so you're just left with what we call the bones. A lot of times I'll do like a before picture of the bones, and then an after picture. So these are the bones. In the lower right, you can see I've just taken the liana off that tree, and it was really strangling the tree. You can see this deep gouge in the tree there. And so as you know, the nutrients from the ground are being moved up right underneath the bark to the top of the tree. And so when it's squeezing it like that, it's really bad for the tree. Here's some before and after pictures. The ivy in these trees actually died a lot faster than 4 months, but we kept going back and we're like, let's take another picture that's as similar as the before picture as possible. And so, yeah, you can see again, just by girdling the ivy at the base of the tree, everything above that dies. I mean, we keep going back to check what we've done. And again, we just see the same thing, which is just, complete death of the ivy. And again, you can kill like literally thousands of pounds of ivy in a very short amount of time. And it's the fruiting ivy, which is super important to get rid of to stop it from propagating. That's a liana was missed on that tree. So we went back later and we're like, oh shit, forgot that liana. So it kind of gives you a nice comparison between, it's dies when you girdle the ivy on the tree, and that verdant green is still doing really well just because we missed one liana. We killed it after this, of course. But so yeah, if you want to help us get rid of invasive plants in Humboldt County and Redwood Country, please let me know. If you see fruiting ivy in trees, tell people that, if you have a neighbor that has it, or if you have friends that have it, tell them that we'll come and kill it for free. Like I said, we've already been to 70 residences. And if you want to volunteer, you don't necessarily have to go into steep ravines and through blackberry bushes and all that stuff. We got all kinds of organizational work we need help with. Just going out and getting permission. Like if you spend an hour getting permissions for us to go and take out these fruiting ivy infestations, that frees up our time to just go out and actually kill the stuff. But yeah, volunteer. We need help with everything: research, whacking weeds, whatever it is. So we'll be around. We can give you our cards and stuff. But this is our contact information if you want to help us out. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Cobber?
Oh, you're calling.
Okay, here's the here.
Thank you kindly.
And okay, I'm just going to grab.
Hey, folks. Howdy. I survived a black widow bite and 2 agristology exams this week.
What was the first?
The black widow bite. I love grasses. I had a blast.
Black widow bite here?
It was on my hand. No.
Oh,
No, I don't know. Yeah, up in Blue Lake. Yeah. I was stacking firewood.
Yeah.
Yeah, without gloves. Bad move. But happy to be here. I did not. I opted out. I don't know if that was responsible or not, but I lived to tell the tale. So.
There's a lot of bites.
Yes.
It's got a good name.
All right.
Well, the screen looks weird, but
It's just the lichens.
Look at that. Okay, so the first slide, you go like that, but then after that, you should have control.
Okay, I don't know if I saw what you did, but I will give it my best go.
Just try the arrows.
Okay. I've got some.
Okay, and then hold the microphone.
Yes, sir. Okay, I've got something a little bit different. My name is CJ Copper. Most people just call me Copper. You can call me whatever you want, as long as it's in good taste. So my presentation is titled Big Problems in the Tiny World. And I am looking at oak epiphyte communities in encroached oak woodlands out in the Klamath Mountain ecoregion. Quick introduction. So I am a graduate student at the university in the forest ecophysiology lab. My advisors are Dr. Lucy Krahulis and Dr. Rosemary Sheriff. And we're part of this really awesome, huge collaborative project where we are working to classify all of the vegetation communities in the Klamath Mountains ecoregion. And over here on the right of the screen are just some field shots from this last summer. Some of our expeditions, they sent us into some of the most wild and beautiful places out in the Klamaths, and they really just tell us to go, and we go explore all of these wonderful vegetation communities and bring back lists and lists and lists of plants that we saw, and they turn that into meaningful data. It's wonderful. This is a map of the Klamath Mountains ecoregion that I took from Michael Kaufman's book. And it shows the whole Klamath Mountains ecoregion, but we're kind of restricted to the California section for the sake of this project. And as a graduate student on this project, we were given the unique opportunity to kind of cultivate our own, what they call a passion project, where we get to kind of combine our personal interests and apply them to vegetation work out in the Klamath Mountains. And so I came onto this project knowing a few things about myself. One, I grew up in Chico, which as far as I'm concerned, can be classified as the land of the Valley Oak Savanna and Blue Oak Woodlands. I knew coming into this that oak habitats had my heart and I wanted to work for and with them as much as possible. I also grew up climbing these trees in Chico, like a little monkey. And as I got older, I became more interested in technical climbing and wanted to also apply that to my research if I could. And as the title of this talk implies, I also have this deep fascination with what some people call the tiny world. And in this case, applying that to lichens and bryophytes, they just have my heart. So my advisors helped me cultivate this project that combined these kind of personal fascinations in a way that would be meaningful and tangible in terms of land stewardship. And so we settled on this idea of adding to the story of conifer encroachment. And I'm sorry, these pictures are small for you who are here in person. So my work for this graduate project focuses on Oregon white oak communities out in the Klamath Mountains ecoregion. And these are fire-adapted ecosystems that, as we know, have been historically managed by Indigenous people throughout the region. This includes the Karuk, Yurok, Hupa, Shasta, and Wintu people. And after attempts of removing these people and their land management practices, and then over a century of fire suppression, what we've seen is this ongoing problem of conifer encroachment where historically we would have seen these really like beautiful, open, super diverse oak woodland ecosystems, which are being replaced by these kind of dense thickets of what is usually mostly Doug fir, with some other conifer species as well. And there's been a lot of research done in terms of reductions in plant animal biodiversity, shifts in stand composition, and a lot of other research. But one of the questions that has not been asked yet is how does this affect oak epiphyte biodiversity? And sorry again if you can't see this particularly well in the back, and I know it's kind of a busy slide, but I'll go ahead and start this one by answering the question, well, what the heck is an epiphyte? If we dissect that word into its two parts, epi and phyte, it literally means on plant. And in this case, I'm looking at non-vascular epiphytes, meaning they lack vascular tissue. So mosses and lichens specifically, like I said earlier. And oaks have a lot of superpowers. You know that, right? They support immense amounts of biodiversity. And that extends to their ability to support just these really amazing, robust communities of epiphytes. And sometimes also locally rare and threatened species, which is pretty cool. Epiphytes have a lot of ecosystem functions and services, in addition to being intrinsically valuable and just like astonishingly beautiful. They make significant contributions to the nutrients, a lot of nutrient cycles. They act as important food and nesting material for small birds and small mammals and birds, and are important habitat for microbial communities. The list goes on. They're really cool and clever critters that are really important in terms of ecosystem function. And so what I want to know, or what my research is focused on, is how when you go from oak woodlands that have trees like this, where they're fully expressed grounds, I've been practicing my interpretive dance for you guys all day, into trees that go like this, where they're competing with conifers and reaching, like they drop limbs and like send their like apical tips to try to like exceed the tops of the Douglas firs. They're just like really significant crown reduction and alteration to sun and water exposure throughout the tree crown. And because these organisms are non-vascular, they require water from their immediate environment to become hydrated. And they have to be hydrated to conduct photosynthesis. So what you'll see as a result of that is this really apparent gradient in tree crowns like this here. I kind of color coded these things so you can follow along. What you'll see in the middle, and the interpretive dance continues. I'm sorry if you can't see me over Zoom. If you imagine you're a fully expressed oak crown, right? Where you have water concentrated the most is towards your center. You're gonna have a lot of moss and liverworts or bryophytes there. And as you move along towards like the middle of the crown, you're gonna get these kind of cool transitional zones where you have bryophytes and what we call cyanolichens, which is a lichen with a photosynthetic partner that is cyanobacteria. And then as you move out to the twigs, I'm wiggling my fingers for you on Zoom, you start to get these really robust communities of chlorolichens, which are lichens with green algal photosynthetic partners. And so, yeah, my honest curiosity is just what happens to epiphyte biodiversity in oak woodlands when they're undergoing this transition into encroached stands. And I'm going to skip this next slide because it just says what I just said. Skip to the good stuff. Some beautiful pictures of moss. This on the right is Dendralcia, which translates to something like friend of trees, which I think is just a wonderful name. Up top here, it's dehydrated, and then down here, it's saturated with water. And I just think that's wonderful. And then down here in the lower right corner, this is a recently fallen branch from one of my study sites. And I think it's just a beautiful representation that life begets life. There's all of this biotic activity going on in these crowns. And when they're returned to the ground, ultimately, new vegetation can come up and, continue the cycle. I just love that little seedling. So I thought it was cool and I wanted to include it. And then the good stuff continues. This is all from the same tree, which is just pretty cool. There's a lot going on. Like some trees can like an individual tree can support like several dozens of species. And we'll just look at this one. For instance, this is like the size of your finger, and off the cuff, I could count like 8, 9, 10 species of lichen there, and you like scale that up to an entire tree, right? That's a lot of biodiversity going on, like mega contributions to biodiversity that these organisms are giving. So I just want to note that while conifer encroachment is an issue, there is an immense amount of awesome work going on. Lots of great people working actively to restore and preserve oak woodland habitat. And I think as we move forward with that effort, that these communities are worthy of consideration and deserve to have their story told. And that's it. Thank you. Oh, and also, sorry, I wanted to give a shout out to the North Coast chapter for awarding me the student research grant, and they're helping me fund this research. So thank you.
Thank you, Copper. And when you have some data, you'll come back and
Yes.
tell us all about it.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so there's one more talk, I think. Let's see, I have to figure out how to get out of here. Yeah. Okay, so Marianne, are you there?
I am.
Okay, oh great, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, and then, yeah, maybe Laura has to give you control, I'm not sure.
It looks like it. Should I hit the send request button?
Well, she's probably listening.
Okay.
Um,
I'll close that. Still, nope.
Laura, I wonder if I have the power to do anything.
Hi, sorry. Should I make them a co-host? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. And also other strange things are happening. But yeah, so Marianne needs the capacity to share her screen.
Okay.
Isn't it magical how things happen at just the right moment or the wrong? Yeah. Well, what does this thing do?
Oh, it looks like I think I'm sharing.
Oh, you are.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
How about that?
So my name is Marianne Maki, and I'm going to share my observations of the gnome plant. And I'm told that the scientific name is pronounced Hematomes congestum, but you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. So I was looking for native orchids in the spruce forest near Big Lagoon in July, and I stumbled upon these plants that I'd never seen before. I didn't know if it was a plant or if it was one plant or a group of plants. So I buzzed home and asked on Facebook and learned that they were gnome plants. And while these don't have a rare California rare plant designation, they're not common and they have a limited distribution. These are the observations on CalFlora. They're native to the west coast of North America from British Columbia to California, and not much is known about their life cycle due to their rarity. They're also the rarest of the monotropoids, a group that includes ghost pipes and snow plants, which I showed here, similar kinds of plants. Here's a map that shows the general area where I found them. This is Highway 101 along the right edge, and I parked on Linda Lane and walked into the forest. I went back about every 10 days after I found these and just kept taking photos to follow their progress. So I learned that the name Hematomes means half eunuch, which hemi means half and tomes means sterile or eunuch. And that's because often half of the male anther cells, are sterile. It's a monotypic genus of plants that's known by the common names gnome plant and cone plant, and they grow in dense, dark forests such as spruce, Douglas fir, and redwood. They are mycoparasitic, parasitizing fungi, thus they lack the green of chlorophyll. Once I was aware of that, I checked for fungi in the area but didn't observe any, and I thought it could be that even though none had emerged above ground, the mycelium network below could be supplying these with nutrients. And I've dated each one of my photos for you so to follow the progress. So there's small fleshy stemless perennial plants forming lumps in the leaf litter, but in this case, they sprang from along an exposed spruce tree root that was tucked in among some mosses. They are white, yellowish, or pink, the latter being the color that I observed. They grow from a rhizome with fragile roots, and their form is covered with sparse scales, which are rudimentary leaves. The inflorescence emerges on a thick stalk from the soil bearing solitary to densely bunched flowers. The flowers have ragged yellowish or pinkish petals and contain hairs and large rounded yellow stigma, which you can see here. One key to identification is their densely hairy petals with hairs all over the petals, not just along the edges. Here's July 21st. One source suggests that moths pollinate gnome plants, but monotropes are adapted for pollination by bumblebees. The ghost pipes we saw in a previous slide there have some degree of self-pollination, but their primary pollinators are bumblebees. Hummingbirds have also been observed visiting snow plants, again, which I showed before, though it is primarily bumblebee pollinated. You can see here, some are just starting to open, some haven't, and these are more towards the end of their blooming stage. One part of their life cycle that I didn't get to see was the fruiting stage. The fruits are fleshy, round, white berries and apparently smell of cheese, which made me wonder if mice like them. Perhaps because the fruits are fleshy at maturity, presumably they are eaten by some animal, which thereby scatters the seeds in various places in the forest litter. I haven't found any information thus far on what that animal might be. After seeing this image of their fruits, I should have made another visit or two. I can see these blossoms are far more decayed, I guess you would say, than the last photos that I took. And there are two other similar plants. Here's my last one in August. Two other similar plants, excuse me. But after reviewing many descriptions and dozens of photos, I'm sure these are known plants. There are similarities in the immature stage, but as they mature, the differences become evident. I was able to absolutely rule out the fringe pine sap because, as the name suggests, only the edges of the petals have hairs. That and their structure differs noticeably. I also ruled out California pinefoot again because of the structure and that they are primarily white. Both grow in a more upright form as shown in these images. I've been thinking about gnome plants so much that I had a really vivid dream last night that I was out in the forest looking for them, and I found one that was the size of an apple, and they're very small. So anyway, I plan on going back this summer and seeing if I can find them again.
Okay.
What's that?
All right. Well, I guess that concludes the December show. Can we have the lights up? Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody. There were wonderful pictures, wonderful stories, and it's yeah, it's a nice, relaxing show for the holiday season. So enjoy your holidays, and we'll see you back. What is it? January maybe 8th or something like that? Yep. Okay. All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.